Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's Brother Gabriel Romaani again for my tazkiyah, taking your questions. Today, what we're being asked is, what are long-term effects of porn addiction? Well, there are many. And for men and women, they are quite different. So let's start with women, as not too many people talk about this. Do women have porn addiction? Yes, they do. And actually, there was a life science journal that I was reading the other day. And interestingly enough, they studied women in the West. And what they said is their patterns of hypersexuality now are resembling those of men. Now, personally, I believe that is due to the shift in culture and feminism, which basically, culture you have to understand, right? It's a practice, a set of beliefs, something that's done in a community that's shared values, where people actually implement them. So women now, they are basically behaving more masculine. They're adopting masculine traits so they can succeed in pretty much a masculine-dominated world. So they're trying to be like men. But what's happening now is that it shows that they're showing more masculine sexual behavior, such as porn addiction, masturbation, and even promiscuity. The interesting difference is that while men were showing this kind of hypersexuality, they mostly, in general, overwhelmingly stay heterosexual. While women who are promiscuous and hypersexual and show these masculine type of traits, they show an inclination towards bisexuality, which is a very interesting point, because I said the more masculine women become, the more they will be attracted to the feminine. And this is the, you can thank, feminism and this whole movement of women trying to be men is destroying actually our women. Men are still stronger. Yes, there'll be men who are weak and so on and so forth, but men still, when it comes to sexuality, they are much more resistant to these corruptions. Okay? So, women have, in terms of long-term effects, because women don't really have to perform as per se, a lot of times it's more dangerous, the addiction of a woman, because she doesn't realize, she doesn't see immediate problems. Like the man, what they would usually say, or see, they would see erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, all kinds of problems. The woman doesn't really see that. But how it affects the woman long term, women, a lot of times, most of the times, they have mental constructs that they live in, fantasies. And female fantasies are linked to orgasm, are linked to the way the brain works. It influences their sexual life. And that's why we say that probably the most important sexual organ for a woman is her brain. So the way she sees pornography and she starts fantasizing and thinking about it, it basically changes the way her brain works. And the ultimate effect of such would be that she will have issues with orgasming. So now we see statistically that about 70% of women will never reach orgasm through intercourse. And about 30% of women have never experienced orgasm. These numbers are staggering. They are staggering. A lot of it has to, a lot of people don't understand. They obviously will put the blame on men. Men don't know what they're doing. There have been all these studies now, again, pushing feminism and that women don't need men. There's been a study where lesbian women have more amazing sex or orgasms because women know what they're doing and men are just like this. And there's all these studies that are pushing for the degradation of men. And actually this study is interesting because women are used to stimulating themselves their whole life, basically. You think women don't masturbate? They do. They just don't admit it. They don't report it. But now, in the 21st century, with tracking devices, cookies, and so on online, we are able to understand a bit more about female sexuality and what turns them on and what they look at. And even, for example, one of the studies was tracking how much time they spend watching pornography. And it was pretty much coinciding with the amount of time it would take a woman to reach orgasm. While men usually will spend time online a few minutes, which again, kind of coincides with the amount of time it takes the average man to reach orgasm. So the title, I think, of the study was Women Spend Long or Watch Porn More, but more meaning lengthier time. So it affects women, I would say. I think the effects on women are even more dangerous because they're not very noticeable. So women can continue to do this, and then what will happen is they won't be able to experience orgasm. A lot of girls will be watching pornography in the teenage years. When they reach puberty, they start pleasing themselves, and a lot of this conditioning that happens, because usually women will please themselves in a certain way that is not obviously intercourse. Especially for virgin women, they're afraid of, the haram, of course, they're afraid of being impregnated. So they will be stimulating the outside. So they get used to that type of climax. And now men usually will penetrate when they get married. Let's say man marries a woman, he tries to penetrate, intercourse, she doesn't reach climax. Why? Because she's used to stimulation, which kind of explains the other study, which is why women will make other women climax, because usually they don't have the tool to do intercourse. They will be focusing on what women have been doing their whole life, right? So you understand the connection here. So it's important to understand that this is how it affects women. So it affects them in the brain, and they have the ultimate long-term effect is that they'll have a hard time having an orgasm through intercourse. And it's not the man's fault necessarily. Yes, sometimes it is, because sometimes guys don't know what they're doing. But technically speaking, Allah created men and women to be able to please each other. It's only after the perversion of the human mind, of the human body, that people start having problems actually pleasing each other and enjoying each other. As for men, the long-term effects are, of course, erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, loss of libido, loss of testosterone, loss of confidence, loss of hair, just loss of muscle, loss of everything. For men, it's like a total loss. Men, basically, they killed themselves with pornography. It is the demise of men when they get addicted, and 20, 30 years, they're basically using PMO, depression, anxiety. They can't please their wives, the complaints from the wives, the falling apart, drifting apart emotionally, physically. These are some of the long-term effects. So for men, it's a bit more noticeable. So men try. That's why you see that mostly men lead the no-fap community and talk about PMO. But trust me, it is more dangerous for women because it's not noticeable. Women just let it go. And then what they're going to do, they're going to blame men. Oh, men don't know how to do this. They can't satisfy it. No, you also, honey, have your share of the actual blame. Allah knows best. Assalamu alaikum.